Hey, everybody. Hope we're all doing well. Gonna be just me today, but just will be back tomorrow. And we're gonna be doing a little bit of JavaScript. If you're joining for the first time, real quick, my name's Ramon. My friend Jess and I run the series of free boot camps, and we are currently doing the free code camp JavaScript algorithms and data structures new beta curriculum. So if you're joining in and you're like, oh, this sounds really cool, is it too late to join in? Absolutely not. This is self-paced. You can do it in your own time. If you want to catch up with all the recordings, you can go to youtube.com/@badwebsiteclub. Make sure by joining in that you abide by our code of conduct, bit.ly/BWC-COC. And if you want to find a schedule with everything, with all of the sessions, including a Google Calendar, here's a link to the Bad Website Club website, which is a bad website. And there you'll find all the schedule and stuff. Okay. So what are we doing today? Today we're going to be learning sort of intermediate algorithmic thinking. We've done a couple of algorithms before. We've done a little bit of sorting algorithms. We've done a couple of algorithms with our projects. Today, we're going to be doing some more of this sort of like divide and conquer that I love to talk about by breaking problems into smaller problems, by building a dice game. So let's just hop right in. Friends, I invite you please to ask questions at any time. I'll be keeping an eye on the chat. And remember, if I don't get around to your question, there's also the Discord that you can join. So don't worry. We're going to get through this. We're going to do a Q&A after, and everything will be chill. Now, first things first, I want to make sure, yep, I am on the correct Zoom. So here's a preview of our game. We can show the rules of the dice game. Rules are rules. You can toggle and show and hide the rules. We've got our dice over here. A little showcase here. We can see the best score we want to use. And I would imagine that this is from best to, no, it is not from best to worst. It is from worst to best. Cool, except for none of the above. So we can roll our dice. You can see, for example, I got 2, 2, 4, 5, 4, which doesn't give me any. So my score is 0. I'm going to roll again. Still not great. Aha! Now I've got 3 of a kind. So my score is 20. I'm going to click on that. Keep the above selected score. So if I click on that, then that's my score for 1 round. Play again. A couple more rounds. Oh, I kind of messed up there. So yeah, I've never been very good at this sort of game. See, I don't do very well. Yeah. All right, well, nevertheless, let's get started. So all of our HTML, I'm just going to take a quick look for us. We've got our HTML. There's our rules, got some divs with classes and IDs, stuff we've seen before. There's divs with classes. We've got our dice, each of which has a class called die. That's a singular form of dice. The number of rolls, the round, the score options, and I would imagine that we can set and unset this disabled attribute of the inputs. Yeah, I'd like to take a little look here. We got at what we're looking at. So got our buttons for rolling and keeping our score, and it is a form. And then we show our score history. And then at the very end, we show our script. You can't, just as you can't be bad at luck. Well, that's true. Cool. We got our CSS as well. I'm not going to be spending too much time looking at this, but it's always interesting to see, for example, that they're using CSS variables. But let's start right away with our code. So the first thing we're going to do is make a new variable called list of all dice. You'll have to forgive me. I'm still having a little bit of trouble typing quickly today. Selector. Hold on. Whoops. Where'd my window go? Sorry, friends. Document. Query selector all. So notice we're not using query selector, but query selector all, because what we're going to do is get all of the elements that have the class die. So instead of having just query selector to get one die, we're going to get query selector all for all of the dice. And because it is a query selector, not get elements by class or whatever, we're using the query selector, which is the dot, the CSS selector for multiple dice. So cool. Our code passes. We pat ourselves on the back, pat, pat, and we keep going. So now we're going to grab the variables. We're going to grab all of the elements that do stuff like displaying the scores or inputs and put them into specific variables. So once again, we're going to make a variable called score inputs. And this is going to access all of the input elements inside the score options div. So this one's a little bit more complicated. Query selector all. Now, score options. So we're going to start with that score options div. You know what? I might hide the preview so I have some more space to type. So I've got some audio clipping going on, huh? Let me try taking a look at my sound settings real quick. Okay, so my microphone isn't doing anything different from before. Give me 1 sec. Mic volume, echo cancellation. I haven't touched my mic settings in a long time, so I hope it's the stream being a little bit annoying. If it persists, please say something. Anywho, right, score options, and we want to get all of the input elements inside that score options. So input. Now with this CSS selector, we've got, oh, thank you, Jess, for confirming. Here we've got our score options selector for that div, and we're getting all of the inputs that are inside that div. We're going to do the same with the spans inside that score options. So you know what I might do? I might copy paste. So instead of score inputs, we're going to have a variable called score spans. We're going to get in our score options div, we can get all of the span elements. Good morning, folks joining in. All right, cool. So that passes, pat, pat on the back, and we keep going. Now we're going to get those elements for displaying the current round and the current round roles. So first we'll start with current round text. I'm going to use our document, and instead of using query selector now, we're going to use get element by ID. And that ID is current round. That's all well and good. And we'll do the same for, will I copy paste? I think I might. Because I'm noticing it's quite similar. Instead of current round text, though, this is current round roles text. Ooh. I'm going to bookmark your question for just a second there. So current round role text, current round dash roles. Cool. So our code passes. Pat, pat. Now let's highlight this question for a second. Why not including the div selector as it said? So I could have, what you're saying is I could have put div hashtag score options. This would work as well. However, because we know there's only one element with score options ID, and that's the keyword, ID. We know we're targeting that one specific div. There can only be one element, and we don't care what kind of element it is. It happens to be a div, but it could also be a span with a span inside of it. Bad example, but you know what I mean. What we care about is that we want the element with the ID score options. Let's move on. Oh, you're saying, what if we do it with score options div input? But that's not the correct CSS selector. Because you see, the problem is this query selector is saying, hey, get the score options element, get with a div inside it. And there's a keyword. There is a div inside a div with ID of score options that has an input inside of it. And that's not what we want. We want the score options div with an input inside of it. To illustrate that, I'm sure that'll come up again. Take a look here. Score options. Okay. Check it out. We have a score options. Oh, there is a div here. Regardless, we know that there is an input inside this div. But it also could be that there is no div here. Like this. We still want an input that is somewhere inside this div. And that's why we're being very specific. So what we're doing by saying, hey, give me the div with ID of score options with a div with an input is being superfluous. That is, you're writing code that you don't really need to do. Mr. Grubworm's asking, I thought for the elements within elements, you need to use the bigger than sign. Those are direct descendants, Mr. Grubworm. Notice we're not looking at direct descendants here. We're looking at descendants. These are great questions. Thanks, folks. Okay. Now we'll do the same get element by ID stuff for the score text. I might copy paste some more. No, thank you for asking questions. Total score text. We'll get the element by ID total score. And then we'll do the same for score history. Score history. Cool. Stuff we've done before. Let's keep going. Now we'll do the same for the buttons. So the first one's called roll dice btn. Do the ID of roll dice btn. And the other one is the keep score btn, short for button. Keep score btn by ID. Keep score btn. So we're just grabbing all of those elements. Fantastic. Now we're going to grab the container that's responsible for displaying those rules. So we're going to grab both. Every time I speak, the audio keeps breaking. I don't know if it's a connection thing. I'm just going to touch my microphone. Let me just take a quick look here. My mic volume hasn't changed. Sorry, folks. I don't know why my microphone's giving me trouble today. You know what I'm going to... Oh, hold on. I don't know why the mic volume went lower. But is it different from other days? Sorry, folks. I have no idea why that's giving me trouble today. Reduce mic background noise.
It's
Weird.
okay.
Oh, hey, Jess.
Go ahead and reboot your internet, and we'll just chill out here for a second.
I'll be 2 seconds.
Everything's fine.
Thank you.
I'm driving it. Oh, it's quite a bit of me. I wasn't looking live for that. So let's take a look at the questions we've got so far. Just kill some time. And the nice thing is I'm probably going to answer these questions in a very silly way. Eric, I really, really like this because the answer to this is sometimes and maybe. So saying for the most of the programs you create in JavaScript, will you start with declaring a bunch of variables? And is this the case for most programs you're going to make? This is really kind of a personal choice if this doesn't sound weird. So I like to go ahead. So I'm a big fan of going with the pen and mapping it out. And Ramon the other day showed us that you can do this digitally. But like once you have an idea of what's going to be in your program and the components, really starting to find some of these variables and starting to find some of the functions is a really good object oriented way to start thinking about and coping with it. So, hey, should you declare a bunch of variables just as you start writing your program? It's probably not the first thing you're going to do as you think about it, but it might be one of the first things you do when you get to the actual code writing stage. How are you feeling?
Hi, does it sound better?
You sound beautiful, but you always have. I'm not hearing any clipping, so I'm going to go back to definitely not playing video games.
Thank you,
Work,
Jess.
y'all.
And thanks for your question. Cool. So I guess I just had to restart Google Chrome. Good stuff. Nice. Thanks for insisting on that, folks. So where were we? You need to access the container responsible for. Oh yeah, the containers. Cool. So const rules. Thanks for confirming, everyone. Container equals document. Oh, dot query selector. And here we're mixing up, a little bit of query selector and get element by ID. Rules container. Notice it's a class, so we're going to use a dot there. Sorry, I'm just making myself some space here. Cool. And the next one is the rules button. So const rules btn, please. Thank you. Document dot get element by ID rules btn. Cool. I've done it wrong because I type this as camel case when it should be an ID. I'm going to pat myself on the back. Also for like restarting Chrome. Cool. We're going to have a variable called isModal showing. And this is going to be the variable that dictates whether we show the rules or not. Lovely. Remember to let because we're going to be reassigning its value. So that passes. Pat. Let's keep going. Now we're going to need to keep track of all of our dice values. So we're going to use let again because we're going to be reassigning that list of values. So dice values are array of dice values, and we're going to set that to be an empty array. Cool. Now I can do it. So this bootcamp is free, and Free Code Camp is also free, but they are a registered nonprofit. So if you want to right now, you can always come back and do it later. You can donate to them a couple of dollars every month. I do love this animation. It's probably done with CSS. Okie dokie. Let's keep going. So now we're going to need to declare a couple more variables to keep track of stuff like how many rolls we've done, what our score is, what our total score is. We're going to set all of their values to 0. So let rolls equals 0. Let score equals 0. Let total score equals 0. And then we're going to declare another one called round and set it to 1. So going by this, the number of rolls that we start the game with, 0. Our score at the beginning is 0. Our total score at the beginning is 0. And the round that we are currently playing with is the first round, and that's why it shows a 1. Yep. Pat. Let's keep going. Now we're going to need to change it change it. Now we need to going to add an event listener to our rules button. Add event listener. It is so difficult to type today. Sorry about that, folks. It's going to check for the click event, and we will pass in an empty arrow function. Now in the next couple steps, what we're going to do is change it so that this rules button event listener, when we click on it, it toggles that modal. So in order to toggle, we can use is modal showing, because remember at the beginning it's false. So what we can do is use the exclamation mark or the bang operator or the logical not operator to set it to be, hey, whatever it is now, the opposite. I remember we did this in the last couple of days, if I recall. So, for example, hold on. Forgot to do this with an assignment and not calling it as a function. My bad. So we're going to set is modal showing to whatever is. Let me try this again. We're going to set is modal showing to whatever is modal showing is right now, the opposite. So that should do it. Still not going to affect whether we... Thank you so much. Yeah, the assignment. Yeah, I don't know why I was going for calling it. That was my bad. So that's done. Move on to our next one. So now that we've reassigned is modal showing, we're going to add an if statement to show or unshow those rules, and of course change the label on the button. So if is modal showing, and because it is a Boolean, we know that it'll be either truthy or falsy, whether it's true or false. So we'll just go with if is modal showing, and if it is, we will change the rules btn.text content. Remember, that's the text inside the button to be hide rules. And then we're going to take our rules container and change its display to be block. I thought it had to be a style. I knew it. So it was rules container.style.display, because of course this is the element. This, it says CSS or style property, and then the display property of that style is the whether we display or not display it. Mehmet, y'all are so much better than me. Thank you very much. Eric's asking, why is the below not correct? So if modal is showing, rules btn equals hide rules, so if display equals block. Well, Eric, notice here in the instruction it says update the text content for the rules button. If we're reassigning the rules button, then we're just taking the variable rules button and changing its value. And that's not what we want to do. We want to change the text content property of that value, of that element first. And second, rules container.block. Here, they were being a little bit sneaky, I think, and saying like, well, you should know by now that if you want to change a display property, which we know to be a CSS thing, then you want to do that with the style property. Thankfully, just like it happened with me, they give us hints when we've got it wrong. Nojo Sojo says it very correctly. Also, rules button is a constant, can't be changed, which is 100% accurate. So if it's false, then we'll need to do the opposite. So below our if statement, we're going to do an else, if I could spell that. So else, and now we're going to do it so that we hide the container and change the button text content to show rules. So rules btn.text content is equals to show rules, and our rules container dot display. No, see, I did it wrong again. Style dot display is equals to, as a string, none. So now if we go try it out, because we've already added this event listener, because we've already wired it up, we can actually show and hide the rules already. Now notice, first of all, this is now display block, and the text is hide rules. And if I click on it again, display is now set to none, and the button title is show rules. So that looks good. We'll pat ourselves on the back, pat, pat, and we'll keep going. So now we want to have it so that when we click on roll the dice, we want to generate 5 random numbers, 5, 5, and display them in these little squares here. So instead of having an anonymous arrow function on a event listener for now, first we're going to start with the actual functionality to roll the dice. So that's going to be an arrow function. Cool. Fantastic. Pat, pat. Let's keep going. So we're going to set our dice values array to be an empty array. Cool. We've emptied out our dice. Let's keep going. Now we're going to generate 5 random numbers for each die value. So we're going to create a for loop that will loop a total of 5 times. Now there's a number of ways that we can approach this. I'm going to do this with a good old-fashioned for let I equals 0. I must be smaller than 5, and I goes up every round. Now, some of y'all might be writing in the chat, oh, is this the best loop to do? Is this the best way to do it? Maybe in this case it could be. If there's other more fancy way to do it, that's totally fine as well. Hello, folks joining in. That is totally fine. This is a way that works, and I find it to be legible. So inside each iteration, we're going to make a random number between 1 and 6 inclusive. And we're going to round it down to the nearest whole integer. So in each loop, we're going to do random dice. We're going to set that to be a random number between 1 and 6. Okay, let me see if I remember how to do this, because a math.random gives you a random value between 0 and 1. So whatever we do, we want to add 1. Cool. Now we want to do math random. How does it go again? Oh, math.random times, there we go. Goodness, where's my, there we go, 5. So this is going to give us a random number between 0 and 5. Add 1 to it, and we need to take that whole thing and round it down with math.floor. I have no idea if this is correct. It is not. You should multiply math.random by the number 6. Okay. That's it? But I thought it was ranging between 1 and 6. I'm not going to argue with FreeCodeCamp yet. You should use math.floor to round the result down to the nearest whole number. Thought I'd done that. Maybe I have too many parentheses. It is possible. Okay. I had too many parentheses. My bad. There we go. So we round that all down, that number between 0 and 6, and add 1 to it to make sure it's between 1 and 6. Whew. Okay. Pat, pat. See, this is why these hints are useful. And like, I highly, okay, let me try this. I highly encourage you not to get discouraged if you don't get it on the first try. Now, we're going to take that random dice value and put it into our dice values array. So dice values are dot push random dice. Cool. So far, so good. Pat, pat. Now that we've got our array of 6, pardon me. Now that we've got our array of 5 dice values, we're going to display them on the screen. So we're going to take our list of all dice variable, which if you don't recall, bear with me, is the list of all elements that have the class die. So we're going to loop through all of our die elements for each. And we're going to use our callback with both the dice element itself and the index of that dice element. There we go. Fantastic. So we're going to loop through each of our dice elements with that dice element itself and the index. Let's keep going. So in our callback function, we're going to use the text content dice.text content and set that to be dice values. Gosh, it is so hard to type today. Index. So what are we doing? We're going through each index of this array, which remember are dice elements. And for each of those dice elements, we're setting its content to be the value at the index for the random numbers. So it's saying, hey, for the first die, put in the first random number. For the second die, put in the second random number. For the third die, put in the third random number, and so on and so forth. Fantastic. Pat, pat. I think. Oh, no, we're not doing it yet. However, I'm in control. I can do whatever I like. I'm going to call roll dice right now. Let's see what happens. Hey, look at that. Let's try it again. Cool. So it's already giving random numbers, which is what we want. Oh, I love what Jess is saying here. So it's saying, okay, so saying, hey, put the random numbers we made here. That's where they go. Exactly. Oh, hey, look at who's impatient here. We're going to add an event listener to our roll dice button. Nojosojo's asking, what does index point to? The index of the element we are currently iterating through. If you give me 2 minutes, we'll go into Python Tutor and I'll show you what I mean. First, we're going to add this event listener. Click. And we're going to add our event listener. Doesn't do. Oh, right. Add event listener. Cool. Now that we've done that, before we do the step, I would like to step into Python Tutor real quick, and I'll show you what I mean. So, fruits.for each fruit index console log fruit index. Kuiper Q's excited about cantaloupe. Look, I couldn't think of a fruit that starts with the letter C, and I panicked, and then I thought of cantaloupe. So we have an array. Apple, banana, cantaloupe. We're going to loop over each of those fruits, and in our callback have two parameters, the fruit itself and the index in the array of that fruit. So check it out. At first, fruit is apple and index is 0. Index is 0, fruit is apple. Apple 0. Next one, fruit is banana, index is 1. Fruit is cantaloupe, index is 2. There's more. Chalice here. Hi. We're doing a little bit of algorithms today. Index array. I'm going to call it array. Check this out. Oh, and I want to point out what Stephen B is saying here. You can name the parameter whatever you want. For example, index or r index or whatever. True. For example, I called them fruit, index, and array. So if we go through, there's our fruits. Now check it out. The third one here is a reference to that same array. Now, don't ask me why you would ever want to do that, but JavaScript gives you the option. If you want to learn more about that, let's go into MDN and I'll pass you the link to for each. If I scroll down, callback function, check it out. So callback function is called with the following arguments: the element itself, the index of the current element being processed in the array, and the array. Nojo Soldier saying like pointers in C. Look, I'm gonna say maybe. So, oh, you're very kind. Thank you. Yeah, inside our callback function now. Oh yeah, so when we press on the roll the dice, we do want to make sure that we have done wait, hold on. We want to add an if statement to check if rolls is strictly equals to the number 3. Right, because we can only do up to 3 rolls in each round. Just no. So if rolls dot if the number of rolls we've done is equals to 3, then we're gonna get an alert displayed that says this string here. Look, I'm struggling to type today. I'm feeling very comfortable with copy pasting. So we'll show an alert that says, hey, you've already made all 3 of those rolls. So you can put that there. Fantastic. So doesn't do anything yet because our rolls is not equals to 3 yet. However, check out what happens if I put rolls equals to 3 now. Can you all see it? I wonder. No, you can't see the alert. There is an alert. Like the screen share doesn't show the pop-ups, but there is an alert if I put rolls equals to 3. So this feels good. Y'all are very, very kind. Pat, pat. Right. However, if the rolls hasn't been reached, then we're going to roll the dice itself. So we're going to do an else statement. And here we will increment rolls by 1. So rolls, we could do plus equals 1. I like, for example, plus plus. And then we'll do the actual dice rolling itself. Yeah. So rolls plus plus, roll dice. Cool. Let's try it out now. Rolls the dice. Now we know that actually, why do I even, you know what? I don't trust my code. I'm just going to put a little console.log. I have rolled rolls times. Y'all are very sweet. So I have rolled 0 times. If I roll dice again, it's going to say I've rolled 1 times. Okay, it's not perfect. And then we're going to do, I have rolled 2 times. I have rolled 3 times. Doesn't display it yet because it's showing the error. Then it shows I have rolled 3 times. See, now it'll never go above 3. So, code looks good. Pat, pat. Let's keep going. So now, if we're trying to roll the dice, as we saw, we're going to see that the rolls and round count don't change here in the game itself. So we're going to make a new function called update stats. That is an arrow function. Doesn't take any arguments. Fantastic. So we just made a new arrow function. Pat, pat. So inside this function, we're going to update the number of rolls we've done and the round that we're currently on. So current round rolls text dot text content is equals to rolls. Of course, it hasn't happened yet. So we'll do the same for current round text dot text content is equals to round. So what we're doing is literally taking these spans here and updating their values so that it reflects what the current state of the game is. So, feeling good about that? Pat, pat. Let's keep going. Now, we're going to be doing this when we roll the dice. So, update stats. Stats, please. That was a typo, my bad. Cool, feeling pretty good about that. So, now, when I roll the dice, check it out. The number of rolls goes up. See? And now I can't go up anymore. We're still going to need to do the round stuff. We haven't manipulated the round part of this, but let's move on. So now we're going to start implementing the detection of what kind of score we're getting with the number of dice. These are known as 3 of a kind, 4 of a kind, full house, and straight, or just a random combination of numbers. Based on that outcome of which one of these goes up, we can add points to our score by selecting one of those radio buttons. So we're going to make a new function called update radio option, and it's going to take 2 arguments this time. It's going to be option and score. 2 parameters, pardon me. Now we don't know yet how this is going to work because we're just laying out option node, my mistake. We're just laying out what this function will be structured like. That's better. Pat, pat. Let's keep going. So to enable the radio buttons, we need to set the disabled property on the score inputs option node to false. Okay. So I would assume that option node here is the index of one of the nodes. Now, what does that mean? Let me show you what I mean. Remember, we made a variable at the beginning of this session called score inputs. Let's go up here. Score inputs. Query selector all. So that's a list of all of the elements that have all of the input elements inside here. So these input elements here are the score inputs. Now what we're doing is we're taking that score inputs at the index option node so we can infer, we can figure out what option node represents. Option node represents the index of the input that we're going to enable. So this is an element, and we're going to set its disabled property. Goodness, I can't type today. To false. So take this element here and set its disabled property to false. Cool. Now, what fun is doing is writing all this code without trying it out. Excuse me, free code camp. Thank you very much. Update radio option. Now, let's try the full house one. So that's the one at index 2. Look. Yeah. So with this, we have set the disabled property of this element to false, which means now it's enabled. So we can start figuring out what this function does. Let's keep going. I love what Chell says here. Yay, it's electable. It is electable indeed. Oh, selectable. That works too. Yeah. I was super ready to accept that electable was like the right way to say it. Right. Where's disabled declared? Check it out. Let's go to the HTML real quick. Here's one of them. This is one of the inputs. Check it out. So its disabled property is set. So now we'll need to update the radio button's value to the current score. Okay. So that radio button, remember it's this one here. Dot value is equals to score. And again, don't believe me? Let's try it out. So update radio. Hold on a sec. No, just I'm going to remove your question if you don't mind. Radio option with the, let's go with the large straight now. So that's index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 with a score of 500. Now we can see there it is. Now, if I inspect that in the HTML, what's it called? Inspector, check it out. The value of that input is now 500. So that's the score that's going to be assigned to that radio button. Of course, we don't want that in there. Fantastic. Pat, pat. Let's keep going. So Nojosojo's asking, so through JavaScript, we can remove that disabled from that input by just assigning it as false. Correct. Because at the end of the day, that's an HTML element that we can manipulate. So after we've done that, we're going to update the text content for the span element next to the radio button. Ooh, okay. To be the template literal this. Okie dokie. So score inputs. 1 second, Nojosojo, I'll answer your question in just a minute. For the span element next to the radio button. How do you get an element that's next to the radio button? Hold on. I know. No, I don't. Let me take a look at the at the HTML real quick. Where is our cool? Because we've got because we want the span. Does it have an ID? There is a span here. So there is a span there. And the input is next to the label. How do I get an element that's next to something? Dot parent dot query selector. This is probably completely wrong, huh? So I'm going to look at the parent of that input, and then call query selector with span dot text content is equals to, I have no idea if this is right, template literal this. I think I should try it. So lots of folks giving ideas here. Let me just try this real quick. How do I do this? Update radio option. I will do the first one. So 0 with a score of 500. Let's see how it looks. Cool. Well, that didn't work. And I think this is where I'm headed. Parent node. Let's try parent node. Parent node. Look. Thank you. There it is. Cool. This was a guess, and there is a non-zero chance that this is not how FreeCodeCamp wants us to do it. Yep. So the score, that makes a lot more sense. Yeah. So, yeah, because we had those score inputs, but we also had those score spans. Do you know what? I still like the way I did it because I'm being more like, I don't know, clever, but it's not very readable. So, you know, I don't know if I'd agree that it's a strangely worded request. It was just like I misunderstood. So score spans. That works too, right? Let's give it a try. Update radio option with, let's do the last one. No, let's do the third one. So 2. And let's make a score of 500. There. Lisa's like, we learned something new. I agree. That's why I'm not even upset about this. It's just like, look, we just tried a goofy way of getting there, and if it works, it works. Pat. Let's keep going. Hey, look, it's suggesting we try out the update radio option thing. Like I haven't been doing this already. So roll the dice and you should see that the first radio button is enabled and displays the current score of 10. Yeah. Oh, I do like flan. I won't say no. I will never say no to flan. They don't have them here in Austria. Yeah, so when I roll the die now, it shows the score. Cool. Feeling pretty good about that. I do realize that we're coming up to the end of this session, and I do want to take some time for Q&A. So I'm just going to do a couple more steps. We're removing this from our radio options. And we're just going to, I might actually leave it here so that tomorrow when we come back, we're going to start implementing how to detect a 3 of a kind, a 4 of a kind, and get a score by summing all of the 5 dice values. So I feel like pretty good about stopping here. Let's take a step back and see where we're at. So we're about a little bit more of a third of the way. Tomorrow we'll be getting into the more algorithm heavy stuff. So yeah, no homework. Just want to make sure we go through this as far as we can together. Gosh, this hour just flew by, huh? I like this stuff. Let's do some Q&A. And folks, if you've got some questions, please also bring them in. So we had that question before. Why are we now doing the div selector? So as we said, where was that? Here. Because this looks in the descendants, we don't need to specify that div. If we were doing direct descendants with the bigger than sign, then we would need to have the div, because input is not a descendant of score options. Hope that helps. So Eric's asking, and I overheard a little bit of Jess answering this. So for most of the programs you create in JavaScript, you will start with declaring a bunch of variables. This is the case for most programs you'll make. Yeah, most of the time you want to be declaring either functions, classes, variables, stuff you need to work with essentially. So yeah, you need to lay down that foundation of the program you're writing itself. No, just asking, can other attributes be manipulated similarly through JavaScript? And the answer to that is yes. Here's what we're going to look. We're going to look up style, but I want specifically the style. Can I scroll down here? No, I guess not. Let's go with disabled, and I want specifically the HTML attribute, but when manipulated through JavaScript. Do you know what? We're going to try something else. Element. Yeah. Here we go. So we've already been working with a couple of these. We've got, for example, class list. You might remember class name. The other stuff, I don't know what any of that is, but there's a bunch of, there's inner HTML. These are all the element attributes that we've been manipulating. Local name. I mean, there is stuff that I don't even know what it is. Next element sibling. Hey, we could have used that. Outer HTML. Interesting. Prefix, scroll height, scroll a number representing the scroll. There's a bunch of stuff we can manipulate here. Let me see if there's any more that we might recognize. Tag name. And you can see which ones are read only. That is, you can change them. That you cannot change them. And those that do not say read only, you can. ARIA stuff, that's the accessibility stuff we talked about back in the web bootcamp. Has pop-up area hidden. There's just so much stuff, folks. Here, let me look one up that we might know. Style. Give it a sec. I guess not. Sometimes it's a little hidden in the documentation, but like the point is there's a whole bunch of stuff you can manipulate. Okay, well, if there are no other questions, I just want to take a moment to say thank you so much for bearing with me today, especially through my technical issues. Tomorrow we'll be back with step 33. There's no homework other than to take a step back, be kind to yourself, relax, let it sink in. Remember, this isn't all going to click at once. So bear in mind that often there are things that you're just like, you know what, maybe I don't need to go in that depth and understand everything about it. And well, if you want to, there's documentation, and sometimes it makes a lot of sense, sometimes it doesn't. And yeah, if you have any other questions, remember we have the Discord. Here, let me grab a link for that since I have a few seconds. Discord channel. Yeah. It was good hanging out with everyone today. Have a good one and see you next time. Bye for now.